Hey, everybody. I appreciate you three joining me today. It's going to be a really fun conversation. And over the past year, we've had so many conversations about how breweries have pivoted and survived the past 2 years. What a weird 2 years it's been. But you are in extremely tough jobs that are not often as romanticized as, working at a brewery. And I'm really excited to dive in today. Cary, I love your smile already when I said that. I know I'm really excited to dive into how you've made the most over the past couple years through this pandemic and how you've continued to provide value to the brewers that you represent. But first off, Sherry, because you are to the right of me, I would love for you to just introduce yourself, tell everybody a little bit about what you do in the world.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cary Wohlgemuth. I'm the executive director for the Missouri Craft Brewers Guild. I am the first director for the guild, and I was hired at about the end of 2018. So I got one full year of great guild building before the world came crashing down. So I might have a little bit to say, but maybe not as much as these guys that have been here for a little longer than me.
No, appreciate you being here, Sherry. I'm excited to meet you, hopefully in Minneapolis, and then definitely when I come with Craft Beer Professionals to host a workshop in St. Louis in June. So looking
Absolutely.
forward
We're
to getting
looking
to know
forward
you
to it.
better today and after that. Now,
Sounds
Cary,
good.
you and I both have a Virginia connection. You went to the University of Virginia, although I did not go there. I love the Charlottesville area, but how did you end up in Louisiana, and what do you do now?
Yeah, so I actually played football for a long time. I was fortunate to play at the collegiate level and then professionally. So I had a big sports path that led me into politics. I figure I just switched my cleats for dress shoes and still play the bloodiest battle in Louisiana at least. So yeah, my dad has been lobbying for about 42 years, and I kind of got into the business with him, and the craft brewers became a client through my lobbying efforts and executive director, much like you, Sherry, that Louisiana never had an official executive director. So I kind of filled that gap and I'm able to balance lobbying and managing the guild, kind of both in the same. So it's been a good partnership so far. And I've been the executive director for about going on 5 years. So
Now, Cary, were you a craft beer person before this, or you just saw the opportunity to help an industry that seemed kind of cool from the outside back then?
yeah, I do have one quick thing. My brother-in-law, before he was my official brother-in-law, he was from Indianapolis, and he would come to Louisiana for Christmas. He would ship a suitcase full of beer, and I thought it was the strangest thing. I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Look, I know my beer. You don't have it, and I know what I drink on Christmas and on Christmas Day and on Christmas Day after." And that kind of started me, but that was about 7 years ago. So it was before I started this. So he kind of got me into really understanding what this all is about. And Louisiana's behind the curve on a lot of things in craft beer world. So we weren't in the mood of kind of the big boon. Ours was later. So it kind of all kind of happened at the same time. So I kind of got into it. Then I started to see the laws change, and now we're better than we were. We're still the worst, some of the worst of the worst, but we're better than we were. But that's kind of my path.
And that's one reason I'm excited for today's conversation because you three represent breweries in different states of their craft beer journeys and adventures. And I think, talking about all your experiences will be really valuable today. Now, Paul, you and I were together outdoors in a really crowded space in Denver. And it was a great time, but it's a little bit quieter today. So I'm excited for this
Right.
conversation.
I know. That was fun, though.
Oh, it was a good time that night. Absolutely. It was a beautiful evening. But for everyone who hasn't had the pleasure of meeting you before, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. I'm Paul Leone. I am the executive director of the New York State Brewers Association, and I too was the first hired, but it was way back when you look at executive director lives in 2013. So I'm 8.5 years into this job now. When they hired me, there were 135 breweries in New York, and now we're about to hit 500. So it's been it's been a ride.
That's amazing. New York State's definitely doing great things in the beer world. Now, that brings an interesting question. Several of you have mentioned that you were the first hire as an executive director, of your state's Brewers Association or guild. Going into a position that didn't exist before, how did you know where to start? What were your goals? And secondly, is there anyone else on your team? I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on that.
Sherry?
Sherry.
I'll start.
Eric.
So before I was hired, everything was really just run by the breweries, volunteer, and they really kind of galvanized around a couple of legislative issues and then realized they need a little more help. my background is in Chamber of Commerce work, so very similar. And my education is in journalism and advertising and marketing. So I saw an opportunity to sort of get everybody organized and just kind of, we started from the ground up. We literally had our first meeting together with our board and took a look at the bylaws and said, okay, let's shore these up a little bit. And then I just kind of hit the ground running and built a website and social media channels and email list and started recruiting members. We had about 24 members when I came on board, and we're up to 75 now. So I just kept moving forward, trying to get as many people aware that we were here and we were ready to, start working together to become the voice of beer in Missouri. So that's kind of how we got started. And then of course, these other folks that are in guild positions have been invaluable to me, just reaching out, sharing stories, asking questions. We have a Facebook group where we all can chat with each other, and that has been tremendously helpful. And then, of course, when the pandemic hit, we started some weekly phone calls with BA staff as well, and that actually kept me from going crazy. So
we're going to dive into that in just a few minutes, because I've heard about the value in those calls. And Sherry, you're a one-person operation, is that correct?
I am. Me, myself, and I.
So how do you balance your days? I imagine you wear so many different hats. Do you wake up each day with a focus, or is there a certain arena that you kind of put a lot of your efforts in?
Oh, wow. That's a hard question. I think from all my years in working in nonprofit arena, there isn't really one particular focus necessarily. There's so many balls in the air, and you just have to do what you can to keep them from crashing down. I have a lot of event planning experience, a lot of communication experience. I don't have as much lobbying experience, and that's something that I'm working on and learning more every day. But our legislative session just started in January, so I am a little more focused on legislative issues at the moment. But we're also, our program year runs from January to December. So we have all of our events kind of plotted out for the year, and all the communication and marketing that goes around getting all those off the ground. So to answer the question, really, whatever's being thrown at me at the moment, kind of bob and weave, get some stuff done.
I can relate to that. I imagine in the position of being an executive director at a guild is very similar to many situation to being a solo entrepreneur. You're wearing so many different hats, sometimes putting out fires. Your efforts are all put in different areas as you try to just get to the next step in whatever you're going for. And, so much respect to you all for doing all of that.
It's a little bit like controlled chaos, maybe, or not controlled
chaos coordinator.
The greatest job in the world, though.
Why is that, Paul?
Yeah, it is the greatest job in the world. I mean, I started, was by myself. We had $600. I actually had about $600 in the bank account. And so it was, okay, you got to raise money to pay yourself. And I got some brewery donations to the little seed money. And then we just started going from there. And, much like Sherry, we had to figure it out, like beer, Brewers festivals and, how do we raise money? And then I was lucky one day to get cold called by someone who was like, I'm a sponsorship person and I love beer. And so we brought on a partnerships person, which brought in some more revenue. And then we just started to grow and more marketing, more events, raise more money. And now there's a total of 5 of us working full time with the association. Membership and events manager. I have a director of partnerships. I have a marketing coordinator. And I also have a special events coordinator, and all of us have revenue generating roles, and that's the key. Got to pay for ourselves and raise money for the association. So it's been, it's a machine right now. So I barely remember those days of being alone. So when Sherry says, and Cary, like, oh my gosh, I was all alone. I want to give you hope that there's a way to grow.
And how long ago was it when you were first hired, Paul?
That was my question.
So, yeah, 2013. Yeah, so 8.5 years ago.
So not even a decade ago. Wow.
Yeah.
So looking at it from a business perspective, when did you realize you could hire a team to help you out?
Well, it's been scary all along. I mean, we could never really afford to hire anyone. and then it just got to the point where it's like, okay, and I'm sure Sherry and Cary and everybody who's working alone gets to a point where the board goes, okay, why aren't we doing this? And why aren't we doing this? And we've got to do more. And it's like, well, I can only do so much. And you're going to have to invest in somebody if you want to do more, of those things. If you want to have more festivals, or you want to have more partnerships, or you want to do all those things, one person can only do so much. And so that's kind of where we got to at that point. The board said, great. As long as you guys are raising money and we're bringing in income and we're, supporting our mission, sure.
And Paul, which is your favorite hat to wear?
Mine? I don't know. This has been such a wacky job. It's like, you get into this job and we think, well, we're going to have 4 festivals a year. And we're going to raise this much money and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And it's going to be the same every year. And it's not been the same every year. It's not been the same year once in the 8.5 years. So when you say what hat to wear, I mean, I have the greatest team in the world, in the whole world. Like I said, my whole philosophy is don't hire people smarter than you, and don't tell them what to do, have them tell you what to do. And that really has worked out for us. I have a great team.
That's amazing. And I think of myself in a weird space between a guild and a community, but a lot like all of you, I'm just lucky enough to talk to so many fantastic people in the industry, whether they're brewery folk, whether they're industry suppliers, whether they're guild directors. There's so much we can learn from these conversations. And how can you get upset when every day you wake up, you're talking business and craft beer? I mean, It's a wonderful industry to be a part of.
Yeah.
No, Cary, how about you down there in Louisiana? How do you manage as a one-person team?
Yeah, we're kind of at that point where Paul's speaking to, where I do a couple things really well, but I have responsibility over a plethora of different veins of issues and things and management. So we're kind of to a point where our board's recognizing the need. We still have a lot of restrictions in our laws that is just stopping us from our overall capacity for growth here. So we're not adding many more brewery members. We're actually declining total breweries. We actually have one of the highest closure rates, although small in number. We have a pretty high closure rate. So again, I think some of these small tweaks in the law make just such a massive difference for our industry. And so I think we're finally to a point where we've been kicked in the teeth enough the last 5 years, where we're going to hopefully this year, every year is hopeful, but I do think we finally got a wave of good support of champions we've really brought along the way. And they're kind of sick and tired of hearing us and seeing the same result of not getting anything that we want. So I think that's a big piece of what our focus is on currently. But yeah, I think all of our executive directors are a little bit different because we all come back. Our backgrounds are so uniquely different. But I think at the end of the day, we all thrive on this balancing act and multitasking, because if you can't do that, you're going to find yourself overwhelmed and not really being able, almost like frozen. Like I can't really do anything well, and it's just not going to work. So I think you got to have that mentality that there's going to be a new issue tomorrow. You're working on something big today, but there's going to be a whole nother issue that starts tomorrow that it's going to take all of your time to kind of put that fire out and then come back to this fire. Hopefully it's not a forest fire by then. So that's kind of how we got to manage just the constant daily issue that pops up. So I think a lot of our brewery members don't really understand everything, little thing that we do. And it's hard to kind of capture, I spent this much time doing this and this much time doing that, as far as I spent this many hours figuring out this, because it took 10 phone calls over 5 days and it was 15-minute segments here and there. So it's hard to capture exactly what we're doing. I think for us, it's more like, what were the results over the past month or 2 months? When I do a board kind of call, like we know you're doing a lot of things. Just tell us some of the successes or the failures that's happened, or kind of the pitfalls you see.
No, Cary, Louisiana, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't a state most people typically assume is a big craft beer state. So I imagine education is a huge part of what your brewers are doing to help, craft beer grow in Louisiana. But at the same time, you're there to fight for the legislative side of things. Which do you feel is more important? Do you feel there needs to be more consumer education in Louisiana, kind of keep that closure rate from increasing? Or do you feel the fight's more so in the courts and, at lobbying and things like that?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. I think our consumer education is low, and we don't spend a lot of money or time on that. our fight here is it is the right thing to do. This is straight politics. This is hardball, behind the rail politics, governor's office on down. And as much as I would love to flood the Capitol with consumers and really just go at it and hit it hard with this voice of the people, it really won't matter. This is strictly the business models that have been entrenched in our system and in our day-to-day, and that education to legislators and policymakers, it's much more efficient and effective use of my time right now. And I think once we do get something passed, it'll start to kind of open up the whole kind of education from all sides of this on how we really use this as a building block to kind of grow consumer base, awareness, and then policymaker base. So that's really the fight we have is just straight politics, and it's pretty hardball.
Thanks for sharing that, Cary. And a follow-up for everyone on that. The craft beer industry is so relationship-based. Which relationships for the three of you have been the most valuable in seeing growth for craft beer in your state? Whether it's, just with the brewers directly, whether it's maybe an advisor you talk to regularly who gives you good insight, where have you found relationships valuable to help craft beer grow in each of your states?
Well, I can tell you that, that was a different answer pre-pandemic. I think that, for us, it was all of the relationships we had with our state government when everything hit the fan, that really turned out to be our most valuable relationships, because when rules were changing, at one point I was sending out updates 3 times a day, a morning update, afternoon update, and evening update on all of the changes that were happening. And I was able to do that.
Paul, I have to stop you there real quick. Yeah. This is kind of a jab at all the brewers listening. They were checking their email that much?
They were scared to death. So so in that particular situation, they were checking their emails every day and emailing me, because things were changing so much, right? And the world was shutting down, and how do I keep my business open? What can I do? What can I do? All of those things. And so those relationships with our state government really helped all of the breweries in the state of New York, stay alive. They knew what the rules were. They were going to follow the rules, and they were allowed to stay open. They were essential businesses. And they could ship and deliver beer, which they were never allowed to do before for a temporary amount of time. And all of those, just navigating that for 2 years. And it's still going on with mask mandates and other things. So today, I would say the answer to your question is our relationships with state government, which just feed our breweries so that they can continue to try to stay alive.
Thanks, Paul. And Cary, I would imagine you would say something similar. As a lobbyist, do you feel your relationships with people in government are the most valuable?
Yeah, it was tough just because we're not the most favored child in the state, so we didn't get the love that we wanted. I think it really showed, though, in the pandemic, how not only all the different partners in the industry and how we were sidelined, but from the government side of things, we just weren't given an option. Every other business in the retail or the food world was getting exceptions, allowances, kind of processes to get back to business, and we were just getting stonewalled. Which is, it happened. We weren't stopping, and it adds to our kind of story coming to the Capitol and things of how we were unfairly treated through the whole pandemic, and so it does build our story. It hurts because my brewers were just, everybody's still recovering, but we did take an enormous hit in all facets of that. So, but usually, as far as like how we operate, we usually look at the Southeast region of guilds, because no offense, Paul, if something happens in New York, legislators here don't want to do that. They're like, well, it happened in New York, let New York do that. We don't want any part of it. And so there's not this like
so short-sighted. Let me say that for the record.
It's but that's how they operate. And that's not uncommon outside of brewing world. We look at our Southeastern Conference states, and we try to stay somewhere in the Southeast regional averages from school to beer. And so it's just unfortunately, and you're seeing the Southeast, we're moving at the slowest pace, although we're getting lapped here by the Floridas and Georgias, and even Alabamas are making some great strides. So we usually we have a Southeast region of guild directors that we can find more sorrow amongst our groups because we have similar laws.
No, thanks for sharing that, Cary. Sherry, how about you? Which relationships have been most valuable to you in your position?
Well, like I said, we had really just gotten about a year under our belts before the wheels fell off. But in that year, before things got scary, I did make a lot of headway with building some connections with our alcohol state department, alcohol control department, and just our board members were, so supportive and helpful. And, they're also scrambling, trying to get their business, off the ground or keep it open or whatever we could do. And so just between them and our alcohol department, where I could call them with my questions that, like Paul was saying, we found out we could do some stuff that we didn't know we could do because no one had ever needed to do that. And in the state of Missouri, we have pretty great atmosphere really for craft beer. We have to give a hat tip to Anheuser-Busch for the years that they have been lobbying for beer in the state of Missouri. It really paved the way for a lot of our Missouri brewers to be where they're at today just through legislative efforts. So I think being able to talk directly to the folks that have boots on the ground, and then, like I said, I had a pretty good open communication with our alcohol control. So, we could make asks and they could reassure me that we could do the things that that we could do, that we ended up being able to do. We didn't have to do a lot of fighting like some of the other states did. So I think that's what really put us in a good position. And just being able to have those open conversations really helped a lot.
Yeah, it's all about those conversations. And it's been a challenging past couple of years. We hear so much about the negatives, but here in Craft Beer Professionals, one of my favorite things has been, there's been daily conversation between people in different states, people going through the same challenges, coming together and knowing that you're not alone. I think just knowing that you're not alone gives a lot of hope. And I know you mentioned it earlier, several of you, there's been guild conference calls from guild directors across the country over the course of the pandemic. One, are those calls still happening? And for you personally, what's been the best part of those meetups?
I would say for me, just as a new director, those calls were very valuable to me. Just for the mental health of knowing I'm not alone. That part was huge. And then just getting some guidance from other states as to how they were approaching this issue. How we could communicate better with our members. It was just great to share ideas and share a beer. There were many afternoons when we were on the phone drinking a beer, talking to each other, trying to get through this. And that just really, it was so very helpful. And another part of your question was, are they still going on? They are still going on.
Awesome.
So I think that, to me, that was the best thing that came from the pandemic, was just being able to connect with everybody virtually. And then when we got together at CBC or other, events, it was like, oh, we've been talking to each other this whole time. I know who you are. It was nice.
Sherry, were you at the Great Divide Bottle Bar event at CBC?
I did not make it over there, no.
Because I know there was a lot of guild directors at that one that took a really big picture. I didn't know if we were in the same room, just didn't know it type situation.
No, I wasn't there.
Well, you're talking about so much you've learned from other guild directors, and I think there's so much as a community, just in craft beer in general, we can learn from others outside of our general areas. Is there one strategy or tip to pick up those calls that stands out to you?
I'm sorry, you were kind of cutting out a little bit. I couldn't hear you.
Is there one strategy or tip that stands out to you, something that you've learned from another guild director or just in general conversation on those calls that you took from whoever provided it to you or were able to apply it in Missouri?
Oh, honestly, just knowing that everybody was also, sometimes spinning their wheels, sometimes gaining some traction. It just helped me. It gave me some hope, to try different avenues and paths and not take things personally and, just keep moving forward. And I think, there wasn't any, it was almost everyone saying the same thing to each other, and
Yeah.
so, and just being able to vent a little bit too is helpful. Some of us just felt so frustrated and overwhelmed. And I think being able to recognize that everybody was sort of in that same boat really, I don't know, it gave me peace of mind, which is strange during the chaos that we were experiencing, but it really did help me.
And it's absolutely something we all needed and we do still need, I believe.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Paul, how was the relationship with the BA? Not just before the pandemic, but since you're the grandfather of the directors right now.
As far as the BA goes, the BA's always been great. I mean, in the early days, they had a liaison that directly was involved with us between them, and then they really worked hard at getting more guild directors because every state needs a director. Every state does, and right now there are directors leaving a lot. Left and right. I mean, they're dropping like flies right now, and it's concerning. It really is concerning because it's a hard job. And Andrew, to your question, I'm looking around the screens, our jobs, the titles might be cool, but really what you're seeing us in our rooms right now, in our offices, like this is it. Like we don't go to big offices. We literally work alone in our offices, and you've got the entire weight of the industry on your shoulders in your state. And sometimes you just need people to talk to because it's am I doing the right thing? Am I not doing the right thing? And even after 8.5 years, I so value my relationship with every single director because there's something to learn from every single one of them, regardless of how many years. I had help from Tom McCormick, who just retired, for crying out loud, from being an executive director. He helped me a ton, and there are a few others of us that have been in for 8.5 years. At the same time, Rob in Arizona and Mary, and there's about a handful of us that have been. So yeah, I mean, I think that's how we all survive. I was thinking the other day, it's like there was no playbook before this. So you can't go, what did the guild do in the 70s when consolidation was happening? And how did we didn't exist. We're a new breed of people because of the craft beer industry. So we really, really rely on each other. Kind of thing. Am I doing the right thing? Am I not doing the right thing? And I wish my mental health, like we all just gravitate together because we all get what our issues are.
And outside of these Zoom calls you would hop on, how did you kind of disconnect from all the stresses of your, job during the pandemic? Were there ways you were able to just get away for your mental well-being?
Me, no. No. I don't want to complain. Like I literally have had, I've taken 2 vacations in almost 3 years, and I worked through both of them. Just because I try to go away for a week. And then something would happen, and I'm sure Sherry and Cary can relate to this. It's like even if you're away, they will find you. Weekends, holidays, nights, and that's our job. Like that's my job. And so when the governor drops a bomb in the middle of your vacation at the beginning of it, it's like you can't just say, okay, I'm going to wait a week during a pandemic to get back to everybody. You just drop everything and you do it. And so I'm waiting for this to be over.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest challenges, the roles you three are in. You're constantly on call. You have to be ready at the moment a pin drops to help out your members because that's what you signed up for and that's what you're passionate about. Mm-hmm. Cary, are you still with us?
The greatest job in the world, still.
I think Cary might have had to step away for a minute. We'll get to Cary when he comes back. But Sherry, I'd love to hear from you. We're talking about how you've engaged with the guild directors, but how have you successfully been able to engage with your members over the past 2 years?
Well, we have been just pushing forward. Once back in 2020, when the restrictions all lifted, it started to warm up and we could be outside and enjoy having a beer. And so we started something that we had wanted to do was to have sort of monthly meetups, happy hours, if you will. And we could do that in outdoor space, standing 6 feet apart. And so we started doing these monthly gatherings and we would have a handful of people there. I think the first one, we might've had like 10 people. But we had a beer, we chatted about how everybody was coping with everything. And folks were like, keep doing these. And so we did, we kept moving forward. A brewery would host it. We moved it around the state so that we had plenty of opportunities to connect with everybody in the region. Our allied trade members jumped in and, they wanted to connect. So we just started off really small and tried to do it as safely as we possibly could. When things got scary again, we, stopped. And then once the vaccines were available in 2021, we started back up again. we got such positive feedback from our members, on the brewery members, on our allied trade members, just having that chance to get together for like 1 or 2 hours, sharing a beer and just talking about what's happening with them and what's going on. And so that's just really how we've tried to keep our legs under us and keep that, connection. Because I mean, my members didn't want to Zoom. Nobody wanted to Zoom, so we tried to, I emailed everybody to death, but nobody wanted to get on a video call. Nobody wanted to do that. So the chance that we had to gather together in these small groups was immeasurable. I mean, I think it really kept everybody going and gave people some hope, just face to face. There's nothing like it. So you can't, no matter how hard we try. And I do appreciate the technology and the fact that we can even do this today. That's fantastic. But I think we just kept plugging away at those little small events. And then we were able to hold our annual meeting for the second time ever. And in the fall, this past fall, we had a fantastic turnout. Everybody really we had great positive feedback. Everyone seemed to have a good time. And it just gave me hope and motivation to keep going. We've got a lot more we want to accomplish. So even if we have to, start small, I think we'll build some momentum and keep things rolling, hopefully.
And looking at these in-person events you've hosted, the small meetups that started with just 10 people, we're all craving interaction. And like you've referred to, it's great to see people and things like this and Zoom, but our eyes get a little tired sometimes. It's super nice to see people face to face. And I would imagine when you had these meetups, people were literally just excited to see another person and have a beer outside of the screen. But how much of these conversations were not only just about seeing people, but learning their needs and better ways that you could serve them?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had conversations with every person at the event, asking them how they were dealing with everything, if there were things we could be doing better, how can we help? So, I mean, most of the feedback I got was that even though I felt like I was spamming my members, they were saying, believe it or not, if you may feel weird about all the emails, but it's actually helping us tremendously. Even if it doesn't look like they're opening them or whatever is happening, they're reading the emails and they're listening and paying attention. So I think I got some positive feedback just from that, that we were just sharing as much information as possible about the landscape. And Missouri's a big state, and we have regions where the craft beer is sort of settled, but we have breweries out on farms. We have rural breweries in small towns, and they're not the ones that are necessarily traveling across the state to come to the meetup. So keeping that line of communication open for everyone is crucial. So that's what's keeping me going. We just got to keep talking.
Awesome. No, Paul, how about you? How have you been able to maintain these relationships with all your members and successfully, stay in touch with their needs?
Well, we do every year. We do regional meetings. It's a big state, and so we'll go, Long Island meeting, New York City meeting, and then we'll work our way around the state. And those are really well attended. So we do those. I just finished those up at the end of last year, and it's just an update on the industry, have a few beers, talk, and so that face to face, like Sherry said, is like so important to everybody. Just meeting in a brewery and venting and listening more than anything for us, and letting them know that we're here for them more than just emails, because you're right, most of the time they don't read the emails that they should. It's just and it's in the email. So but anyway, yeah, but that's it's just stay in touch with them as much as we can. And we have a private members only Facebook group, and we have other ways for them to kind of communicate and be involved with us. And like I said, we've got 5 employees, so they're in different regions of the state, and so we all do our best to stay connected. And we've had 3 live beer festivals already in person, and we've got another one coming up this weekend, and they've all been really well attended, and people want to get back out. They're vaccinated only, which is good, and so far, knock on wood, we haven't had any issues with being COVID outbreaks at our events. So.
No, that's fantastic. And, Sherry and Paul, looking at just understanding your members' needs, when you were having these conversations, is there anything that surprised you? I mean, obviously, it's been a very bizarre 2 years. It's been very challenging. But do you have a moment where someone said, this is something I'm struggling with, that you were like, wow, I never thought about that? Did you have any moments over time like that?
I mean, yes and no, I guess. I'm still so new to the industry. And I think just learning about the whole process and everything that the breweries work on and deal with from day to day is, still, I'm amazed by a lot of that every day still 3 years into this. But I think I was very surprised at how everyone, and I shouldn't be, I was very surprised at how everyone helped each other out. I mean, that's what craft beer is the community. I think that to me was what I found very refreshing. And that was surprising to me. We had a couple of breweries that worked together with the breweries in their region to do like drive-through. So you could place your order for your beer online, and then it was touch-free cards drive-through. You show your order form, they load the beer in your car. I mean, they all worked together and did this. And I mean, it was amazing just how everybody really tried to help each other out to get through the scenario that we were all trying to deal with at the time. So I mean, it was a pleasant surprise. I think that instead of hunkering down and shutting the doors and zeroing in on just their operation, they were trying to help their fellow breweries out. And I think that's outstanding. So
no, that absolutely is a pleasant surprise. How about you, Paul? Is there anything that surprised you based on your brewery's needs over the past couple of years?
I think that the one thing that I do notice, I know still is the stress level and the mental health. I worry a lot about mental health in our industry right now because everybody's just had their head down and working is hard. And you, through Craft Beer Professionals, I know you see it just through the questions people ask and the issues that they have on, through your platform, which is super important. And so, yeah, I think, it didn't surprise me. It just concerned me a little bit. And I think that as a guild, that's where we need to step up and try to alleviate all of any pressure we can on our end to let them know that we have their backs. And I think that's where they find membership value, right? I mean, one thing we discovered before the pandemic, we raised a lot of money doing beer festivals and we did stuff like that. But the really true meaning, of a state guild, during the pandemic was to make sure that they had the information they needed and to have their backs and to be a resource. And that's what they pay membership dues for. And I think there were a lot of breweries that understood that. Our membership, believe it or not, actually went up after this because I think they realized like, oh, that's why I pay my $250 a year to be a member of the guild, because they're a resource for me. So, that helped. I'm sorry it took a pandemic for them for that to happen, but we're here. I mean, that's what we do every day. It's like we're the insurance policy for the industry. We've got their backs. We're a resource.
Absolutely. And you mentioned like the mental health of the breweries that you work with. Are there any services and value you wish you could provide?
Well, I think, it's funny. There are some companies that have stepped up for sure. I mean, we have a relationship with the folks with suicide prevention. They're going to speak at our conference. And, I think a lot of times, giving, our regional meetings and getting a platform where brewers can talk to other brewers and understand that they're not alone, that helps a lot too. And so, there's been a lot. And then through all the pandemic, we really dealt with, came to surface the ugliness of, sexual harassment in our industry. And so there's, one thing after another, and it needed to be dealt with, and it still needs to be dealt with. We have DEI issues. There's so many issues in brewing. It's more than just making beer. And that's a lot of pressure on breweries, to make sure that they're compliant in everything that they do, to make sure that nobody's being sexually harassed in their tap room or on their workforce, in their breweries, and just, it's a hard business. And I think a lot of people think, wow, man, $25 a 4-pack or whatever it is, you guys must be printing money, and it's like, they're not. So very few of them are just barely getting by, but they do it because they're so passionate. And that's what makes this the greatest industry in the world, is to be around those people every day.
No, I love that. Now, Paul, you've mentioned you've had several festivals over the course of the pandemic. And, everyone who's putting on an event right now, for the most part, is putting out some sort of statement about how they're dedicated to the health and safety of the attendees. I mean, of course you are. If you're going to put people's lives at risk, you're going to make the safest experience possible. But how are you executing this and making sure that you actually are putting out these safe experiences?
Well, we're vaccinated only events. So everybody goes through a checkpoint first to make sure they're fully vaccinated. And then we've also reduced the number of tickets sold so that people have room to move around. We have hand sanitizing stations. People can wear masks if they want to wear masks. And we try to provide a space where less contact. Brewers will use pitchers now where they used to just grab your glass and everybody would hand around. And we just try to give tips to people. It's like, okay, don't share, don't do dumb things like share your beer with everybody, and try to keep the hugging and all of that stuff. And everybody wants to hug everybody now because they're so happy to be around people. But we try to do the best we can to make sure that people feel safe in this environment. And I think the vaccinated only ticket sales have really, people appreciate that. And so ticket sales have actually been pretty good. And then we've got very little pushback so far on this.
No, that's fantastic. Sherry, how about in Missouri? I know you've had some industry events. Have you had any customer-facing events to the public?
We have not. And as a young guild, we simply hadn't put a festival together yet. So that's something that our board is looking at. And there's even we just met for our annual planning session, and some of our board members were like, do people even want to go to festivals? And then they meant from industry. Do our craft brewers want to go to festivals again? We know the public wants to, but that's something that we're just kind of exploring. I mean, we would love to get a festival off the ground, and that's something everybody seems to want to do, but we're taking our time and really kind of checking out the environment and seeing, how much effort we can put toward this. It's a huge fundraiser for many of the guilds, and that it's important for us. Like Paul said, we got to make money to pay ourselves. And if I ever want to have a staff person, we've got to raise money. So that's, it's on the horizon. But as far as the in-person things that we've done, we, same as Paul, we didn't have a vaccinated only, but we had masks and hand sanitizing stations and reminders and, stretch the tables out and that kind of stuff just to encourage being safe. But this is the new normal. Nobody wants to hear those words.
The new normal. I think it's what we're at. The new normal. I don't know how many news we're at right now. But
Sure.
Paul, you've been doing your guild position for quite some time now, and Sherry mentions events. How necessary are doing these consumer-facing festival type events to help scale a guild, to grow it? That way, you're able to hire staff.
I don't. It's sort of a catch-22, and I think I heard Sherry's like, "Wow, you got so much on your plate." Case in point that you can't organize a beer festival. Well, then, at some point, it's like, okay, do I hire a membership or an events person, and then they can start doing the festivals? Or do you pay a company to do that? But then they have to pay them huge chunks of money. So each guild will come to a crossroads of, and then you look to your board, right? Then the board has to, the board's either going to let you do it or not do it. That's who we work for, is the board of directors. I just happen to have a great board that's like, it's like your neck. Sure, go ahead. Go do it. Not quite like that, but that's sort of what it feels like. They trust us. That's the reason why they hired us. And but having a great board, just at a crossroads. I feel for Cary because you're right. We've got to raise money, and there's so much we can do, and so much we need to do, but you can't do it alone.
Yeah,
you just can't. And the board shouldn't expect you to.
So, Cary, welcome back to the conversation.
Yeah.
Hopefully your floors are looking really nice in the office.
Really nice. Great. That was very walking around my computer like, I got to get back onto this thing.
No, you're here. Perfect timing. So, Cary, how have you been able to successfully engage with your members and kind of gauge their needs over the past 2 years?
Yeah, that's a tough question.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, I think, we try our hardest, at least I do, to get engagement. And it is extremely difficult. And I get it. I mean, I've learned enough about the brewing world, not only from my guys, but from other people and executive directors. I mean, they're doing everything as well. And I mean, they're managing the tap room, they're cleaning the tanks, they're serving people. I mean, they are doing everything. And then the workforce shortage has only put on more responsibility somehow to them. So, to get them to do surveys, respond to emails, I mean, it is a tough thing to handle. So, Facebook's been better. We got a little private Facebook groups. We've got kind of our MailChimp, and I can actually see who's opening it and who I need to check on. Hey, you didn't see this. It was a lot of work went into this. There's a good nuggets of wisdom there. I'll shoot it to you. I'll text it to them. We've got GroupMe. I mean, we've got tons of different things out there, and each kind of mode gets certain people. So I kind of know how and what gets where. Some people aren't on Facebook personally, or they're businesses, but they're not, and so they're not in the group. So it is a different dynamic there to get the information to everybody. But it works. But again, it's just tough to wrangle them to get down and sit down and read even like a short text message. It just really is. And so to get them, I'm not only asking them to read it, but there's like a call to action, or like, hey, go sign up for this. It really is difficult to kind of get them over the hump. But I think one thing I've experienced is giving my board more responsibility in that, hey, I kind of say from the beginning, like, look, I don't relate to brewers like you do. I'm not a brewery. I don't own a brewery. I don't have any interest I have an interest in helping the industry. So what I've done,
Cary, you don't even have a beard. Come on.
I know. So it's so lame, me and Paul. But I kind of give some responsibility if each kind of board member gets their section of brew. And so like, I kind of task them with, hey, you're on the board. It's in the volunteer board. If we don't have a ton of money. If you can't go fundraise and get money, I got to get some time. So kind of put the onus on them a little bit. Say, hey, look, here are your breweries. None of them have signed up for this. None of them have done X, Y, Z. Like I've done everything I can do. You can relate to them differently, and you're kind of their point of contact for the board. And so that's given a little more responsibility. And then I'll call them out. Look, these breweries, you know who you are. They haven't been doing the things I've asked them to do. So I put on the board member, and then, I'll still be wrapping around and trying to get them to do it as well. But just kind of giving a little bit more responsibility to why you're on the board. Because most boards, you're there to raise money. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. If you're not some administrative guru that's going to really lead and be the next executive director, you're there to raise money, and you're there to support. And if it's not money, it's time or it's energy, whatever that is. But our previous boards had not been as engaged. It's only been like a label. And I'm trying to change that. But again, that change is not flip a switch.
That's a really interesting point. That's a very interesting point there, Cary, because as someone who works with a small team myself, it's hard to delegate tasks. Once you start, Sherry, I'm sure you deal with this, and Paul, I'm sure you did as well. When you were a team of one, you were doing everything, and you did it in the systems you thought were most valuable. So when you do grow your team, it's tough to give up some things that you enjoy doing, even if it's for your best mental health, to give those tasks up. So, Cary, how have you successfully delegated those tasks and made sure they were completed?
Yeah, we did actually hire someone at a rate I will not disclose, but it is, he gets a lot of in-kind beer. Let's just say that, which is a great bartering tool for all things. But he is on, and he wears a lot of hats too, but he's really our member manager, and kind of making sure all of those, because really our allied members and our enthusiast members, our retail partners, I hadn't spent the time that I needed to, and the board has wanted me to on it. So I've kind of gave him that whole role, and I wasn't doing it well. And I was honest. I was not doing this well. And I've got people who want to pay us, haven't paid us. We need to tie up all these loose ends and make sure who's in and who's out. So he's kind of been leading that, which has been really a huge relief for me. But again, we found a diamond. I can't tell you how we did it because it just won't happen again. But I think that's been a huge weight off my shoulders as far as the management of the association, to get those non-brewery members engaged, re-engaged, and pumped up about what kind of we're creating. So as he deals with that, he's also into he's real techie, helping our website, helping our member management service that we got, kind of get all those pieces lined up. So that's been a big lift off my shoulders for sure.
Oh, I can only imagine. And because Cary, you're like so many brewery owners, your focus isn't completely in craft beer. You're lobbying for other,
Yep.
interest as well. So
Yep.
yeah, it's tough to balance your time, and having someone by your side to help you out is extremely valuable.
Yep. Yep.
Now, Paul, you had mentioned, guilds are resources, and the three of you are doing amazing things. Guilds nationwide are doing a fantastic job of engaging with their members. But is there anything you wish your brewery members knew about what you go through that they might not know?
No, I don't think I don't need to be a burden on them to know for them to know how hard our job can be sometimes. We're here for them. And I keep saying, I'll say it again, it's the greatest job in the world. It really is, and I just love everybody, all these people. Like, just everybody's so nice. It's such a great industry, and I go to work every day, and I haven't regretted a Monday yet, like since 8.5 years. Like, it just doesn't cross my mind. And
I think the reason you haven't regretted a Monday is because we don't know when Monday is.
Right. It's kind of true. That's a great point. It really is. But it's no. It's a great job, and it doesn't really feel like a job sometimes. So no, they don't need to know anything. They just need to know we're here for them.
That's the perfect answer. I love it so much.
Yeah, I think
Cary?
for me is, and I'll just be quick. Sometimes I get a call from a brewer and they're like, "I don't want to take your time," and I'm like, my time is your time. And they're like, "Oh, can you do this for me?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's talk through it." So I think sometimes they know that I'm working hard on some kind of bigger tasks, and maybe they don't think that some of their smaller issues that, even like simple questions. Hey, can I do this? Or I'm trying to invest in this. Can I make this work? And I can literally say, yes, go. As simple as that. And that's like a huge, for their day, that changed their whole day, right? To get that answer. So that's one thing that I wish, not that I want to get called more, but I do wish that they wouldn't hesitate to just call me
and stop saying, thank you for your time. Like, that's what we're here for. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And I think one thing all the guild directors do, it's something we haven't really touched on today, but you're connectors. You're connecting people across the industry, whether it's beer drinkers to service providers to brewers. You're bringing people together, and that's so vital. Now, it's been a weird 2 years, and we're in 2022 or early 2022 right now. What's one of your goals for this year? What do you want to see happen in your state over the course of the next, 11 and a half months? Because like a lot of these brewers, I'm sure you have that list of things you want to achieve this year. What little checkbox would you like to accomplish?
For me, I want to keep growing the guild membership. We have about 150 breweries in the state of Missouri, so we're halfway there. I want to be way closer to 100% at the end of this year. So a lot of my focus is going to be recruiting members. Like Paul said earlier, it took a pandemic for people to realize that we're here. And we've had great momentum, and I just want to carry that forward. We've had probably more than a dozen breweries open since 2020. So, I mean, we're still growing as far as breweries, and there's still many in planning. So, my goal is to just try to get all those folks connected with the guild so that we can help each other and move the industry forward. So that's my plan.
That's a fantastic goal. How about you, Cary?
To Sherry's point about brewery and plannings, when I started 5 years ago, we had about 25 brewery and plannings. Today we have about 3. We've got to at least show the industry, the rest of the nation, that Louisiana cares about this, and we've got to have something change. I don't care if it's an A to an or. We've got to have something change that we can say the state policymakers care about this industry enough to change something, and it could be a small change. But we've got to send a message. Everyone else is just passing this up, and we're just not seeing even the thought of investment here. So I mean, it gets back to economic as much as beer, but we've got a huge state that loves people from all over the world who come here and tour and expect us to have a booming craft beverage industry, and we just don't. So,
is there a specific change in your agenda you'd like to see?
I mean, pick your poison, but I mean, there's a simple one. Y'all talking about festivals. We're prohibited, and breweries are as well, from hosting a special event, doing something outside their normal operating procedures, as well as the guild is. That's a huge. I mean, that's how you make your money. And it was put in there so that an association of brewers could not grow, or distillers could grow, to kind of really capture some good consumer base. I mean, so that's a simple bill. We're gonna offer it this year to literally scratch the line that says we're prohibited from doing that. And look, that's how you all make your money. That's any nonprofit. You have your fundraiser, you have your gala, you have your something that you throw, and all the proceeds goes to that 501c6 or 3, and that's how it works. And we're prohibited from doing that. So I think that's going to be a battle, unfortunately. As simple as that sounds, it's going to be a battle. And that would be one of the biggest things that I think changes, that we could see help me.
Wow. And we could go down a big rabbit hole in that one, because it fascinates me what you've just said, Cary. But, are the guilds and your brewers able to work with outside event organizers to kind of circumnavigate that?
Not really.
Wow. Well, you're a better year.
They're on the wrong side of history here, Cary.
Yeah.
Keep going after them.
Yeah.
They can't keep it up forever.
No, they can't, but they're doing a damn good job.
Yeah. That's why you're the right guy for the job, right? I mean, we think about the backgrounds of all of us, and, you're the guy who needs to be in that chair.
Yeah,
for sure.
No, I appreciate that. Well, we're going to keep fighting. We're going to,
It's going to be a better year, Cary. I appreciate all you do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Paul, looking ahead to New York, I mean, you've been there 8.5 years now. What are your goals moving forward?
I don't know. I don't know if I have any control over it, but I'm just hoping for some more predictability. A year where the can shortages aren't hovering over everybody's heads, that the pandemic turns into an endemic, and no more mask mandates and closures and fear and all of that stuff. I'm just hoping I think everybody thought in 2020 we'd be closed for 2 weeks, and then after the 2 weeks everything would be fine, and here we are, almost 3 years later, over 2 years later, and I'm just hoping that this is the year that everybody gets a break. And I don't know what normalcy is anymore, but everybody needs a break. They're tired, and and as far as New York goes, I don't have the battles that Cary has. I think we're just really fortunate here, and Sherry's like relatively new, so she's, you're figuring things out, and we're in, knock on wood, pretty decent shape. We just need to make sure that we keep the ship on the water and keep doing what we're doing, and we're growing still in New York, so we're in decent shape so far.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. And it's been a pleasure hanging out with the three of you today, Sherry, Cary, and Paul. You're all so inspiring, and you all haven't had any days off for the most part over the past few years. You're so dedicated to your members, which is extremely admirable. And I really hope your positions get a little bit less stressful over the next, few months, but I appreciate all you do. Thank you for sharing an hour with me today. Is there anything else you would like to add?
I just want to add one thing. Thanks for what you do too. I think Craft Beer Professionals is really a great platform for a lot of brewers, and you're a big part of this. So
I really appreciate the kind words, Paul. I mean, like I said, I'm a lot like you all in a weird way. I get to talk to so many great people in our industry, and I consider myself extremely lucky for that.
I echo Paul's words too. I think a lot of our members are very appreciative that you've got that community out there. They're getting their questions answered and able to chat with each other. And I think that's wonderful.
And at the end of the day, I think we're all fighting the same fight, trying to educate and provide as much value as possible. And, it's crazy to believe just a few years ago, people were only seeing each other and talking a couple times a year. If we can just make it so they're talking daily, it only makes the ship rise even higher.
Yep. Yeah, just keep bringing value, the value that you add to all the issues, that's where you really you bring that value to me and our members.
Well, I appreciate that. And Sherry, Cary, and Paul, I hope to see you in Minneapolis. If not then, beers before too long. I look forward to it. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully we're out of this before too long. But thank you for sharing all your insight and ideas today. Cheers.
Yeah. See you all.
See you.